Hexcalibur is the 54th episode of the first season of Sabrina the Animated Series. And this one I didn't really like. There may be some tiny spoilers as I discuss the main narrative, but I don't have too much to say. But there isn't anything wrong with it. The story just doesn't really appeal to me. It kind of does slightly, but not really. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Sabrina is trying to find some information, so she goes to get a book that belongs to Zelda. And it's a book that Merlin once gave her once upon a time, but it's a very old, very fragile book, and it disintegrates in her hand. It crumbles into dust. And she realizes that Aunt Zelda would be very upset. So she decides to go back in time to visit Merlin to see if she can get another copy directly from Merlin. And I love the idea of going back in time to get a book. That, as a concept, I really enjoyed. She goes back with Salem, but she actually goes a little bit too far back. And she goes back to the time when Merlin was a teenager around about her age. And while she's there are various obstacles they have to overcome. And honestly, for me, it's not that interesting because I don't care at all about the time of Merlin and Arthur and, of course, Excalibur, hence where the title comes from. So for me, I just didn't find the narrative that interesting. But if it is something you're interested in, then you probably will like it, because, as I said, there's nothing really wrong with it. The narrative flows well, the pacing is good, there are several of the characters. A lot of the characters are, of course, played by people in Sabrina's real life, which I thought was a really lovely touch and definitely made it a little bit more interesting for me. The animation is very good, and in general, I can't really point to anything about it that didn't work well. It's just simply one of the episodes that doesn't appeal to me. I'd love to know what you think of it if you are a big fan of Merlin and stories of this kind of nature, but for me, it just wasn't that interesting. Not a fault of the episode. Hexcalibur just didn't appeal to me in terms of my personal preferences.